Hello and greetings to everyone, and welcome to our virtual event to explore Crater Lake National Park. This is a special event in celebration of National Parks Week and the Fulbright Program's 75th anniversary. My name is Leila Aslanova, and I am the event specialist at the Fulbright Program at the Institute of International Education. And I'm very delighted to see so many of you here today. First, I'd like to begin with a reminder that this event is being recorded, so please disable your webcam at this time if you are not comfortable with your image being recorded. The recording of this event will be shared with you later. Closed captioning is also available, and you can enable that directly in your Zoom screen. We'll also have some time available for Q&A at the end, so feel free to type your questions in the Zoom chat box. I would also like to take this opportunity to acknowledge and thank the U.S. Department of State representatives who are the sponsors of the Fulbright program and are here in attendance today. Our team and I work closely with them to plan our events, and their efforts make our events a huge success. As you all know, 2021 marks the Fulbright program's 75th anniversary. During this time, over 400,000 Fulbrighters from the United States and from over 160 countries across the globe have participated in the program and worked to build mutual understanding. To celebrate this important milestone, the U.S. Department of State and our many Fulbright partners will highlight the important work of current Fulbrighters and alumni to inspire the next generation of Fulbright participants. We invite you to check the Fulbright 75th anniversary website that I'm going to link in the chat box of this event in a second to participate in our future event. Today's event highlights America's national parks and the importance of exploring amazing places, discovering stories of history and culture. We will learn about how National Park Service connects visitors to nature, conducts research in habitat species preservation, and works with Native American communities to preserve cultural heritage. I hope you were able to watch Crater Lake's virtual tour that was included in your event confirmation email. If you haven't, we encourage you all to watch it after the event. We will also share the link in the chat box to that video as well. And now to kick off today's event, it is my absolute pleasure to introduce the special welcome message from the Fulbright Foreign Scholarship Board member, Ms. Margaret Chai Maloney. We'll begin playing video now.
Hi everyone, I'm Margaret Chai Maloney. I'm a member of the presidentially appointed Fulbright Foreign Scholarship Board. I am so inspired by all of the applications that I've read and by all the good that you Fulbrighters do. This year, we are marking the 75th anniversary of the Fulbright program, and we are especially honoring the hundreds of thousands of Fulbright alumni who have done exceptional things in their fields. At the same time, we are steadfastly focused on the future of the program and our future Fulbrighters. Our celebration, including today's, are meant to inspire and encourage the next generation of Fulbrighters. We are also delighted that a number of you here are current Fulbrighters and foreign students. Now, in a more typical year, we would be physically touring Crater National Park, hiking around the rim, gazing down at that dark blue hue in the volcanic lake. When I had the pleasure of doing this a number of years ago as a visitor, I was filled with wonder and awe at what I saw, what I felt, what I experienced. And I could feel that there was true spirituality. And I understood why the Klamath tribes felt that this was a very spiritual place and that their sacred legends having to do with the origin came from this area. Like a lot of Americans, as you can guess, I really love our national parks. My husband is on the board of the National Park Foundation, and on my mother's side, I'm a fourth generation American who has gone across the country and traveled to many of the national parks. On my dad's side, which is the side of immigrants, I'm like a second generation, and I'm really excited to say that my husband and I have continued this tradition, and we are so happy that we've been taking our children to so many of the parks where we have experienced, and even they have experienced, inspiration, and also they have found the parks to be a place for reflection. The United States of America, like all countries, I think we can all agree is imperfect, but we are also very, very much of a place that is evolving as a nation. And we celebrate our freedom of speech and allow our shortcomings as well to be broadcasted and debated openly, ultimately to form a more perfect union. Regardless of the differences and our faults, undisputed is the fact that our national parks are one of the best ideas that our country has ever had. To quote historian Wallace Stegner, the national parks are absolutely American, absolutely democratic, and they are reflecting us as Americans at our very, very best. It is no surprise that our park system has been a model for many other governments. I'm sure many of you know that, and I hope, and I'm sure we will continue to do more of this, particularly because the mission of the Fulbright program and the mission of the National Park Foundation and the National Park Service have been overlapping in so many ways when it comes to education and understanding. And this is what excites me most about today's event. The exchange of ideas is at the heart of the Fulbright experience, and it's also at the heart of the National Park Service's Sister Park Initiative. Through Sister Parks, I've personally witnessed our park managers fruitfully collaborating with park managers in other countries. This idea is also the inspiration for a new partnership between the Fulbright program and the National Park Service that I've been actively promoting. Our cooperation means that Fulbrighters will now have opportunities to incorporate research at parks into their exchange experiences. Our goal is to foster long-lasting relationships between program alumni and the parks. And in this spirit of looking ahead to create enduring connections, I'm going to reiterate that our anniversary celebration, including today's, are meant to inspire and to encourage the next generation of Fulbrighters that will embody the ideals that were contemplated over 75 years ago. So throughout 2021, we're going to be showcasing a year's worth of interactive engagements like this one. Please take advantage, stay connected, and I hope your virtual visit today will make you want to come back in person and encourage others to as well. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Ms. Maloney, for your warm welcome. And next, I have the pleasure to introduce you our host, John Duwe. John is a 2017 Fulbright Specialist to Slovenia and National Park Service Ranger. As a Fulbrighter in Slovenia, John worked with rangers at Crater Lake's sister park, Triglav National Park, sharing ideas and strengthening relationships between the parks. John, thank you for being here today, and over to you.
Thank you so much, Leila, and thank you to all the participants of this presentation, everybody who registered and signed in today. Your support and interest in the parks is huge. Thank you. We're coming to you live today from the Tribal Administration Building of the Klamath, Modoc, and Paiute Snake Tribes here in Chiloquin, Oregon. We're just at the foot of Mount Mazama, the mountain that's holding Crater Lake in. And today our goals are to share some of the diverse stories that Crater Lake has to offer. And hopefully we inspire you to visit, although I think Ms. Maloney just inspired you pretty well to come visit with her speech there. Before we get any further into it, I'd like to say thanks to all the folks that helped put this together. It's a bit of a list, and it's important that I include everyone. Thank you to the Fulbright Foreign Scholarship Board, especially Margaret Chai Maloney for her welcoming remarks. Thank you to the sponsors of the Fulbright program, the National Park Foundation, the elders that are here to speak today, Barbara Alatorre, John Wright, and Boone Jenkins. Ms. Alatorre's son, Marcos Alatorre, for his tech support, the Klamath Council, the Tribal Council of the Klamath Tribes, especially Clayton Dumont, for his help, Richard Hamilton, and the rest of the elders on the elder committee of the Klamath Tribes. David and Michelle Ochoa, thank you for connecting new and old friends. Dave Herring, who you're going to hear from today. David is our aquatic ecologist at Crater Lake National Park. He's going to show you what he does. And then Layla and Claire, both at the International Institute of Education, who are helping make this all happen. Is so awesome. Thank you. And then Troy Haney, the Klamath Tribes IT specialist, who's making all the tech happen in this room today. We couldn't be doing it without any of these folks. So thank you so much. Can we go to the next slide, please? And then actually one more slide. I want to just take a minute to remember an elder, author, and friend, Mr. Clayton Chocktoot. We miss you, Clay. Just keep flying. And next slide, please. So the National Park Service, we are a diverse group of Americans who work together for a government agency that's called the National Park Service. And our mission is to take care of the most spectacular places in our country. And I'm not saying if it's not a national park, it's not spectacular. What I'm trying to say is if there is a location in the United States that has a very compelling human story or nature story, then it's a really good candidate for a national park. And we have 423 national park units across our country, and the National Park Service stewards all of them. I want to bring your attention to the second sentence of the mission that's up on the slide there. It's that we cooperate with partners to extend the benefits of conservation and outdoor recreation throughout this country and the world. And that's what we'll be talking about a bit today with Fulbright. Fulbright is instrumental in helping us share and learn with national parks across the globe. Next slide, please, Claire. So global stewardship is something that I've got to work with in the last few years as a national park ranger, and I didn't know I was going to be using my skills abroad when I got into this career. So it's been very exciting. Crater Lake has two sister parks. As Ms. Maloney mentioned, we have the Sister Park Initiative within the National Park Service, and Crater Lake has two of them. We have one sister park in Slovenia. It's Triglav National Park, and one sister park in China, which is Wuishan National Nature Preserve. Now, I have not had the chance yet to travel to China for a technical exchange. I'm keeping my fingers crossed. However, I did get a chance to travel to Triglav National Park, both as a Fulbright Specialist in 2017 and again for a follow-up trip in 2019. Now, the focus was a technical exchange. You can see in the top picture on the slide here, there's me and a couple middle school teachers actually who are participating in a youth event, and we're working with the iNaturalist app to record biodiversity. And then the next picture is me with a bunch of elementary students during a class visit along the way. So the Fulbright Specialist program was instrumental in that exchange, and I hope to benefit more from it in the future. And I know that other national park rangers and park rangers throughout the globe will, because of the new collaboration. Claire, could you go to the next slide, please? I'm so happy that Margaret Chai Maloney already mentioned this. There's an official collaboration between Fulbright and the National Park Service. So if you're looking to expand, if you're a park ranger anywhere in the world, if you're looking to expand the horizons of your career, of your park, of your agency, look into these projects that are being promoted through this new collaboration. It's pretty amazing. Claire, could you go to the next slide, please? So for the rest of the hour, we're going to be talking about Crater Lake National Park and the stories. And I do hope that you all got a chance to watch the Into the Deep. It's the official Crater Lake National Park film. If you didn't already get a chance to watch that, I think Layla just put the link in the chat. So when we're done with all this, you can watch it. It's a 20-minute film. It's very cool. And it shows all about what Crater Lake is and how it formed. But this is basically a picture. You can't really see it all in just one picture unless you're flying from an airplane. But Crater Lake is a recently collapsed volcano. And this volcano, we call Mount Mazama now, it erupted so huge that it collapsed and filled with water. And that all happened only about 8,000 years ago. And all that water, it came from all the snow and all the rain that we get here in the Oregon Cascades. So now Crater Lake is this lake sitting inside of a volcano, and it's the deepest lake in the United States. It's almost 2,000 feet deep. Because the water is just melted snowflakes and raindrops, it's some of the purest water on Earth, which makes it this incredible blue color that's just astounding beauty. And then the massive amounts of snowfall is very important to all the communities between Crater Lake and the Pacific Ocean. Can we go to the next slide, please? So you might be wondering where Crater Lake is. And it's in Oregon. More specifically, it's in Southern Oregon, in the High Cascades Mountains of Southern Oregon. If you look at that elevation model in the middle of the slide, you'll see that there's a dark kind of stripe of mountains going north and south through Oregon. And those are the High Cascades. None of them are currently erupting, but many of them are dormant volcanoes that still will erupt again. Mount Mazama or Crater Lake caldera is dormant. It may erupt again. And one thing I'd like to point out, two things I'd like to point out in the slide. One is most of Crater Lake National Park, that's the darker green area, is not Crater Lake itself. It's actually about 93% of the park is old growth forests that are protected around the lake. And then the other thing I'd like to show is that whole north-south strip of mountains, the High Cascades, they only run about 80 feet east of the Pacific Ocean. And so, you know, the weather comes off the Pacific Ocean, and that warm, moist air goes high into the mountains and drops all that snow, which is so important to all of Crater Lake's stories. Next slide, please. Since when has Crater Lake been protected or received protection? Forever, since Crater Lake formed. Like I said, this mountain erupted and collapsed about 8,000 years ago. And American Indians have lived in the Crater Lake region for at least 15,000 years. So folks were here watching this thing erupt, watching it collapse, watching it fill with water over a few hundred years, and then coming up to the lake to experience it, to study it, to find out about what's happening here. And so, you know, we think it erupted about 7,700 years ago. So my calculator said that was 5,680 BCE was when it was first protected. But it became a Crater Lake became a national park, the world's 5th national park in 1902. And it actually predated the National Park Service. So it was originally taken care of by the Army. And then in 1916, with the creation of the National Park Service, the stewardship was passed along to the NPS, who I work for now. And then today, you are protecting Crater Lake National Park by tuning into this event and learning about it. And the National Park Service knows that learning about these parks and public awareness about our parks is essential in preserving them. And I just wanted to point these two cool pictures here. The one on your left, that's Huckleberry Mountain with a group of folks that are camping there for the summer, and around a huge mountain hemlock tree with a bunch of baskets of huckleberries that they've picked. And then the picture on the right is of a park ranger leading a snowshoe tour up on the caldera rim of Crater Lake. Next slide, please. So why is Crater Lake so special? You know, I'm so happy that Ms. Maloney gave that introduction and talked about the feeling, the spirituality, the awe, because that's really what is so special about Crater Lake. I cannot explain it to you accurately. And until you go there and feel it for yourself, you won't really know what I'm talking about. But it's awe-inspiring, and it's humbling, And when you visit Crater Lake, you get a feeling that's unlike other places, and it sticks with you. But also, this is protected forever, so you can always go back and visit it again and have those experiences again. So I know that that's all pretty subjective, but I'm saying you have to come and witness it for yourself. Next slide, please, Claire. So when you're going to plan a visit, I hope you can make it all the way out to Oregon this summer. But there are 423 national parks in our country, and national park units. So that includes, lake shores and battlefields and national monuments. They're all over. And these 4 tips are going to help you plan your visit for just about anybody, or excuse me, for just about any park. First, call ahead or go online to the website if you don't want to call. Things change pretty rapidly in the park, so you want to know what's going to be open or closed, so you know what to expect. When you're in the park, you want to look for a park newspaper. All parks have some sort of print publication that you'll be able to find once you get into them. And it has all the up-to-date information. Oftentimes it has maps, trail maps, hiking trail descriptions. So the park newspaper is a good thing to find. If you see a ranger, say hi. We love talking to people, and often you will say hi, and then all of a sudden the questions will start coming. So even if you don't have a specific question, just come up and say hi, and we'll be happy to chat with you a little bit. And then the last thing is leave no trace. Our parks we're protecting them forever, and so we need every visitor to have the smallest impact possible when they're visiting and enjoying our parks. Next slide, please. And this is actually my final slide, and we're going to pass it on to some other speakers to share some stories. And we're going to actually, hopefully you really just see what we actually do to preserve and protect Crater Lake. David Herring is going to be up next, speaking about his support of native species and habitats. And then we'll come back to me here at the administration building, and we'll have 3 Klamath tribal elders who will discuss with me how we support the people of the place through preservation of indigenous stories and history. Now, the last point on there was, and these pretty pictures on the slide, was it says communicate or interpret these valuable resources to the public. So my job for the National Park Service is, we call it interpretation, but I think communication is an easier to understand word. My job is to make sure that the public understands that the parks are here, how they can interact with them, and what the National Park Service and its partners are accomplishing. And a fun kind of example of that is these 3 cool watercolor photos. That's Jeremy Jones' artwork. He was an artist in residence at Crater Lake National Park, got to spend a couple weeks at the park painting to interpret the nature to the public. So without further ado, I am going to turn it over to David Herring, Crater Lake National Park's aquatic ecologist, and he's going to show us a little bit about his job.
All right, thanks, John. First, I want to thank the Fulbright program for including me in today's presentation, and of course, thank everyone who's tuned in to hear us talk to you today. Also, I want to thank the Klamath tribes for being here, and I really look forward to the panel discussion with the elders that we have planned after I'm done speaking to you today. I was really excited and encouraged when I learned that the National Park Service had signed a memorandum of understanding with the Fulbright program earlier this year to increase coordinations between our organizations. As a National Park Service employee and a scientist and a natural resource manager here at Crater Lake, I see that the problems that I face every day in my job and the issues that I try to address in natural resource management aren't unique or local to Crater Lake or to any park in the United States, but often they're problems such as invasive species effects, which I'll talk about today, or climate change that are really global problems and affect the whole world and are addressed by parks and protected areas and resource managers globally. So to me, it only makes sense that we should seek to increase our engagement with those international partners and subject matter experts around the world to bring the best possible science to our work here. So today I'll give you a short description of a project that we've worked on in Crater Lake for the last 30 years. to restore a native stream fish. And I think the project really exemplifies the type of conservation biology work that we can do here at the Park Service, that we do at the Park Service. And it also demonstrates the value of partnerships to accomplish ecological restoration on an even broader landscape than the parks themselves. This project is just one example of our natural resource stewardship at Crater Lake. And like John said, I encourage you, if you can, if you haven't already, or even if you have already, to come back and visit Crater Lake. And I hope that you'll have the opportunity, if you do, to see firsthand some of the other resources that we protect. So in this first slide, I have a picture of the Sun Creek watershed. And Sun Creek is a stream that flows from near the rim of Crater Lake on Mount Mazama, where I took this picture. And it flows south almost 25 kilometers before joining a larger river system that then flows into the Upper Klamath Lake and the Klamath River and ultimately onto the Pacific Ocean. As the stream makes that journey downstream, it starts out in our protected national park, and then it flows out of our park boundary onto some land that's managed by the state of Oregon for timber production, and then across some private cattle ranches before eventually joining the larger stream network. And all of that area, all of that watershed across all those management types is within the home of the Klamath tribes. So I'm really glad that the tribal representatives are here with us today. Next slide, please. So before I talk specifically about Crater Lake and the work that we do, I wanted to draw your attention to this problem of invasive fish species, which we're addressing in Crater Lake, but really threatens native freshwater biodiversity worldwide. And for some reason, people like to move fish around, it seems like. And maybe the best example of this is the rainbow trout. And I happen to be, I feel like I'm lucky. I live here on the west coast of the United States within the native range of rainbow trout. But this fish has now been transported by humans around the world and now occurs on all continents except for Antarctica. The picture on the right is a picture of some rainbow trout being prepared for dinner near our lake research boat. It turns out that even though rainbow trout are native around here, we still introduced them to new habitats and introduced them to Crater Lake itself, where originally no fish would have been found. So when fish are introduced to novel habitats like this, they can cause a variety of negative ecological effects. And I've listed some here on this slide. But the main point is that all of these effects ultimately can lead to local extirpation or even extinction of native species and a consequent reduction in biodiversity. Next slide. So national parks and protected areas aren't immune to this problem. In fact, in some ways, the National Park Service caused this problem in many areas of the landscape across the US. Because in the early part of the 20th century and through the mid 20th century, we introduced exotic game fish to many of our parks in an effort to enhance the visitor experience and enhance visitation to parks. And these are some pictures of park rangers in Crater Lake National Park in probably the 1930s or early 1940s. On the left, preparing to carry some non-native fish down to the lake by horseback to introduce them there. And then on the right, these rangers are showing off their catch of non-native fish that they made that day. So we're still dealing with the ecological effects of these introductions today. And now that the management philosophy of the Park Service has changed somewhat, we are focused in many cases on removing these non-native fish where they're causing ecological harm. And so this happens not only at Crater Lake, which I'll talk about, but in parks across the country. Yellowstone and Grand Canyon, Rocky Mountains National Park, many parks have programs to remove non-native fish. And next slide. Here you can see some examples of some of that work going on by colleagues of mine. The picture on the far left is an aquatic ecologist at North Cascades National Park who's applying a chemical to a lake to remove non-native brook trout. And then the middle picture, someone's using a gill net to remove non-native trout from a high elevation lake in Sequoia Kings Canyon National Park in California. But as I said before, this isn't just an American problem, this is an international problem. And through our sister park program that John mentioned, I had the great opportunity recently to meet fish biologists in our sister park, Triglav National Park in Slovenia, who are tackling the very same issue. So there's a picture of me with one of my counterparts there in the upper part of the screen. And below us, another picture of one of the Slovenian park employees trying to remove non-native minnows from a high alpine lake using traps. Next slide. So in the summer of 2019, I had the chance to travel to Slovenia and provide some technical expertise to our counterparts there and assist them with this project. And on the left, there's a picture of me demonstrating to some school groups a technique we use to actually detect the DNA of fish in the water. And that allows us to document the distribution of invasive fish in lakes or streams. And on the right is a picture of me actually sampling some of those one of those Slovenian lakes, trying to find the DNA of this invasive minnow that's pictured in the upper right. Next slide. So that brings me to my work here at Crater Lake, which has been focused on restoring this beautiful but threatened native trout, the bull trout. And as you can see on the map on the left, Crater Lake National Park is right at the southern margin of the bull trout's range. And the bull trout is now listed as threatened under the Endangered Species Act throughout that range in the United States. So bull trout were one of two native fish that existed historically in Crater Lake National Park and the only native fish that we have in the park today. So it's a particularly important species for us. Next slide. So in the late 1980s, even before the bull trout was listed as threatened under the Endangered Species Act, we recognized that bull trout in Sun Creek were in trouble. In fact, fewer than 200 of the fish remained in the stream at that time. And it was pretty clear that two main factors had caused their decline and were limiting their recovery. The first was this problem that I've just described to you, the competition with non-native trout. So the fish on the left is an eastern brook trout, native to the eastern side of North America. And this species was introduced into Sun Creek as early as 1912. And after several decades of competition and hybridization with bull trout were nearly extinct. We also had another non-native fish, the brown trout, native to Europe, that was present in the stream as well. Next slide. So the other issue that faced bull trout was that outside the protected area of the national park, the stream habitat was completely altered to irrigate a private cattle ranch. And this effectively disconnected Sun Creek from the surrounding stream network and made it impossible for our native fish to move freely across the landscape as they might have done in a natural state. And you can see in these two pictures on the right is a picture from the headwaters of Sun Creek in the national park where, as John mentioned, the habitat has been protected essentially forever. And it's great habitat for bull trout. But the picture on the left is a picture of that cattle ranch in its pre-restoration state. And really, it wasn't a place for fish at all. Next slide. So after recognizing this problem, we at Crater Lake got to work and committed to restoring bull trout in Sun Creek. And so beginning in 1992, and then for really 2 decades or more after that, we worked to remove all non-native fish from 22 kilometers of Sun Creek using electrofishing and application of a chemical to remove the non-native fish. And then we used snorkeling. The picture on the left is one of our staff snorkeling the stream to monitor the response of bull trout. And we snorkeled the stream every summer and essentially counted fish. We found that bull trout responded to the removal of non-native fish pretty dramatically, and they increased in both distribution and abundance by over 10-fold. So by 2020, bull trout distribution extended throughout over 20 kilometers of stream, and whereas it had initially been limited to just a few kilometers up in the headwaters. And the abundance of bull trout had gone from that fewer than 200 fish back in the 80s to a conservative estimate of over 2,500 fish and probably more. Next slide. So eradicating the invasive fish solved one problem for the bull trout, probably the most pressing problem, but the degraded habitat outside the park still prevented native fish from moving freely throughout the watershed. And we didn't want the population to be preserved only in the park, like some sort of a museum specimen. And of course, the fish themselves don't know when they swim across a political boundary and whether they're in a national park or outside of a national park. And so the Park Service formed a partnership with our neighbors, the state of Oregon and private cattle ranchers, and also multiple other agencies and NGOs with interest in fish conservation to reconstruct a natural stream channel that connects the park habitat with the surrounding stream network. These are some pictures of that work, which actually involved digging a stream channel in a place where Sun Creek had historically flowed, reducing the amount of irrigation water that was diverted from the stream, building a fence along the stream to keep cattle from encroaching on the riparian area, and ultimately reconnecting the stream to a larger main stem, the Wood River. And the picture on the right here shows that completed connection at the end of the project, which now allows fish, native fish, not just bull trout, but also red band rainbow trout and some other species to move between the main stem river and Sun Creek. Next slide. So this is just a quick overview, I guess, of our bull trout restoration. And I have to say, it's hard to sum up a 3 decades long project in a 10-minute talk. But I want to leave you with this thought, and that is that the strong, really robust conservation mission of the National Park Service, I think, is what allowed us to sustain the type of commitment that's required to restore a population like this. In this case, a decade that's 3 decades old and continuing. And it was only by forming partnerships and cooperating with our neighbors and other interested parties that we were able to achieve restoration success on a scale that was meaningful, meaningful not only to the people in the region, but also meaningful to this fish population. And next slide. I'll just leave you with that. Thank you. And I think, John, that means we're turning it back to you.
All right. Can't see, there we are. All right, guys, we're back with you. And hopefully we'll be able to spotlight our other elder that's with us today. I'm here again at the Tribal Administration Building with Clarence Jenkins, goes by Boone. We got Mr. John right here, and then coming all the way from Portland, Oregon is Ms. Barbara Alatorre, who you can see in a separate window there. And you know, I have some discussion questions that I prepared for you all, and it'll be interesting just to hear your thoughts and to see your perspectives on Crater Lake after we've seen the perspective of the fish biologist. So Ms. Alatorre, if you could unmute your mic, please. I would like to introduce you first. This is Barbara Alatorre, who's a Klamath elder and historian of the Klamath tribes. So she's been collecting the histories of the tribes for her whole life. And Ms. Alatorre, I know that you hold a special story about Crater Lake and how it came to be. And I know that this story dates back to eyewitness accounts of the formation of Crater Lake. Will you please share that story with the world today on this presentation?
Yes, I will. Did you want me to do that right now?
Will you please? Yes.
Crater Lake is named Kiwash in Klamath language. It's a lake of strong medicine where only the tribal medicine men of the Mucklucks dare to go. For thousands of years, the Klamath Indian people mucklucks have preserved eyewitness accounts of the volcanic eruption which formed Crater Lake. About 8,000 years ago, in the Cascade Range, a giant white mountain over 12,000 feet high exploded 5 times in succession, blowing off its top as volcanic pumice flowed over the Indians' tribal land, burning their huge forest. It became like a barren strait resembling the moon. The eruption sent ashfall over 750 miles to Saskatchewan, Canada, leaving a hollow caldera where the White Mountain once stood. Thereafter, it became known as Sumney, which is in Klamath language is mountain with the top cut off, a very sacred place of the Klamath people to this day. In 1902, the United States government preserved the mountain as Crater Lake National Park. That's just a little short story I got ready for today.
Well,
It's a real big story, really.
it's a story that's still going today, and I appreciate you summing that up. I think that's if folks don't have a chance to watch the park film, that story will do it justice. That's amazing. Now, Ms. Alatorre, I have not had the chance to sit down in person with you and chat, but over the phone in the last couple months, you've conveyed to me a true love of Crater Lake, and so I hope that you could share that with the world right now. And so my question is, can you just tell us how it makes you feel to see Crater Lake, or even just to think about Crater Lake?
Yeah, Crater Lake makes me feel, as soon as I get inside of it, makes me feel like I know it belongs to us since it's been there for us all these years. And my mother told stories about it, and she used to take me up there for lunch once in a while. So we always had a good view of Crater Lake and had it in our heart to see it as many times as we could. We love having it there, and we hope to see it as often as possible. But living up here in Portland, I haven't been able to see it as I used to. But anytime I go down there, I go straight to Crater Lake first. And our Klamath Indian Reservation is down there, so that's why I would go down there.
That's wonderful. Well, I think you've inspired us to even more to visit, and what I take away from that is that the experience of going to Crater Lake doesn't get old, does it? You could just keep going over and over and over again.
Yes, never get tired of it, and every time I see it, as soon as it comes into view, you know, it gives me like the chills, and I'm so happy to see it. It makes me feel so good.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that, Ms. Alatorre. We will come back to you in just a few minutes. But now I'd like to ask Mr. John Wright a couple questions. John Wright is a tribal elder and also on the Klamath Fish and Game Commission. And John, you've been hunting, fishing, camping in this area, in the Crater Lake area, your entire life. And I'd like you to share with us how the Klamath tribes have used the land in and around Crater Lake traditionally over the years.
Traditionally, usually, that I can remember, is a lot of camping. Big families would be camping on the mountain, picking huckleberries most of the time there. And used to have hunting rights up there at one time. Used to be able to hunt inside the park. But now that was taken away turned into the park. But I still enjoy going up there, with kids and grandkids. And my second generation.
And was camping, would you go camp just for, you know, for a couple nights, or would it be would it be more of an expedition up there?
I would camp about every weekend, but my grandparents, and parents, they would stay up there at least 3 months.
And
So I'd be back and forth because I was a young kid running around.
now Huckleberry Mountain, I guess the summit of Huckleberry Mountain is not in Crater Lake National Park.
No.
It's in the Rogue River National Forest. It's just to the west of Crater Lake National Park, but certainly you'd have to travel through Crater Lake National Park
Yes.
to get there. And if anybody goes to Huckleberry Mountain, you are going to visit Crater Lake as well, because they're
Yes.
just side by side. Now, Huckleberry Mountain is a camping spot that goes back for as long as anybody can remember. And I know you used to spend some time there. Could you share just a fun story you remember from camping on Huckleberry Mountain?
Camping when I was little, there was just a lot of dogs around, barking around. I can remember one year when I was up there walking up that trail, and I run into this dog. I looked at him, he looked kind of strange. And I thought it was a pig at first. He was that fat and round and didn't have any hair on it. But later on through the years, I could remember that it was a pug dog. It was a lot of fun. A lot of time running around there.
So you were running around with the dogs in the woods, and they weren't necessarily just your family's dogs, because there were so many families camping
Yeah.
up there.
There's a lot of families up there. Always remember the bears on the highway, begging for food all the time. Come up into the park. There's a lot of bears around.
Yeah, I think we took the trash dump out of the park, and the bears went back into the woods. But back then, I think they were still out looking for food. Okay, well, John, we are going to come back to you, but I want to make sure that we have plenty of time for everyone to speak. This is Clarence Jenkins, everybody, and Clarence, like I said, goes by Boone, so I'll probably end up calling him Boone. Boone, you told me earlier that you grew up fishing Sun Creek, and the same creek that David Herring has been working on for years. You were fishing Sun Creek, and you were looking for brook trout, right? Because the brook trout was the good fishing.
Right.
And now, you know, it's 2021, and we're trying to repair some things that may have been damaged in the past, and we're taking the brook trout out because they're the invasive species, and we're putting the bull trout back in. What do you think about that? Do you think that it might make sport fishing a little bit less fun, but what do you think about trying to restore just one creek up there?
The people that I know prefer brook trout, but I mean, I'd never heard of a bull trout until I come back from Alaska and got to looking at them, and they're Dolly Varden, you know, so. And we had big Dolly Varden up there, you know. 8, 10 pounders.
That's interesting. So that when you were fishing as a kid, your normal was the brook trout, because the bull trout were already, their population had been diminished.
Yeah.
And then you came back, and now we have the native bull trout back.
Well, if they survive, that's great.
That's awesome. Now, here's another question. If they survive, that's great. Looking towards the future. Things have changed very rapidly just in the last 2 years in our world. Of course, in the last 100 years, they've changed quickly. Where do you hope to see Crater Lake 100 years from now?
But I would hope to see it in the same pristine condition it's in right now. I can't imagine I can't imagine it not being there or being enjoyed by so many people. Hope the earthquakes don't bring it down.
Yeah, barring earthquakes and potential volcanic eruptions.
Yeah.
We hope that it will be there 100 years, the same now, and I'm just paraphrasing, the same now, still being enjoyed by so many people. And I feel like the mission of what we're trying to do up there matches that perfectly. So we'll just have to wait and see. Now this next, we have just a few minutes left here before we go to questions that hopefully folks in the audience have for us. But I would like to go to each of the elders that are here today and ask for you to share your fondest memory of Crater Lake. It could be fondest memory of being at Crater Lake or thinking about it, looking at it, telling stories of it. Very open-ended. And Miss Alatorre, would you like to go first to share a fond memory of Crater Lake?
Yes, I remember, I still think of this living up here. I think of it still today, but my mother would take us to Crater Lake, make our lunch, and we'd go sit up there on the rocks and eat our lunch and look at Crater Lake. And, you know, just the blueness of the lake was so beautiful. You didn't see it in other water. It was a sky blue, real beautiful. So I always love to go there and see that.
Well, that sounds beautiful. I hope that you get a chance this summer to go and have lunch up on the rim looking down at the water.
Yes, I love to have my children and grandchildren go up there with me. We never been all there together. So since we lived way up here in Portland, over 300 miles away. So I'd love to have that happen one of these days.
That's wonderful. Thank you. So John, I think it's your turn. What's your fondest memory of Crater Lake, or a fond memory of Crater Lake?
Fond memory?
Yeah.
I'd like to say hi to Barbara first. Fondest memory I could think of right at the moment. We was up there one summer with all of my kids. There was 4 girls. They was taking pictures, running around, being silly. These Oriental people stopped in. They was watching them, taking pictures. Pretty soon they asked them are you Indians? My girls was laughing around. They said, yeah. My youngest girl, she was asking, they asked her what her name was. She said, Little Dove. Little Dove, yeah. Then my other girl started laughing around. And that's the first thing I could think of was those Oriental people. They made the believer out of it. It was a lot of fun to listen to them. Just then when I went down to another park, I was in the front store there. There was a wooden Indian. My wife told me to pose by it. So I went over there and I posed by it. Pretty soon there's all kind of tourists around there that wanted to take a picture of me. I ended up spending a couple hours taking a picture of myself.
So what I'm hearing, John, is that Crater Lake is a place where people from all over the world, all these cultures come together, and there's some real neat cultural exchanges that can happen there.
I see a lot of them pass through.
Yeah, there's just people visit from across the globe, and I truly believe that they all feel a similar feeling when they look at that lake, regardless of where they're from or what their background is. Thank you for sharing that, John. Boone, what's your fondest memory of Crater Lake, if you want to?
Mostly with my mom and my sisters. We'd go up quite often, really. We go up and have a picnic. Every time I drive up 97, it's sitting there staring at me, and I don't know, I just, once you get up there, it's like you were expressing, you know, that I don't want to leave, you know. You sit there, you look at the color of that water, and if you're up there in June or July with little wind, the blue just flashes at your eyes. Stuff, it's like little mini flash bulbs or something going off. I don't know. Like I said, I can't imagine it not being there and that kind of well kept.
That's great. Well, I would like to thank just from the bottom of my heart to Ms. Alatorre, to John, to Boone. You have shared not just knowledge of Crater Lake with me and the park and these folks, but you've really shared part of your heart with us about how you really feel about it. I think that's really important for us to experience. So thank you. Now sit tight for a couple minutes because we still have a little bit of time for questions and answers. I know that 4 p.m. Eastern is coming up in just 4 minutes. So if anybody has to go early or, right at 4, I understand. But we will go up to, an extra 10 minutes or so with questions if they're there. So I'm going to ask Layla to pass on any questions that she might have, and Dave will be able to help answer. Ms. Alatorre can help answer. John Boone can help answer. I'll do my best to answer. So Layla, are there any good ones?
Yes, so the first question is from Amira Nelson, who's very inspired to visit Crater Lake once the travel opens, and would like to hear from everyone on the panel what their favorite trail or activity is to do at Crater Lake.
Oof, that's a tough one. I'll go first. I think that going up to the top of Mount Scott and seeing Mount Scott is the highest point in the lake. It's seen in the park and seeing the whole lake all at once, almost like an eagle would see it, is got to be my fave. You guys have a favorite place to go in the park or thing to see?
Looking up at the park from Mount Coloth on Klamath Lake, looking up north. That'd be a good view.
Yes, the views outside of the park of some near that mountain with the flat top that holds Crater Lake is amazing. Boone, what's your favorite?
I don't know if I have a favorite of it. I drove around it and walked a lot around it, and it's just, I don't know, it's just inspiring. It's to be there when it was going up. Must have been totally terrifying, and the shockwave when that thing blew. They still have pieces of it down in Arizona. So I don't know what. I don't know how far away you'd had to be to survive it.
Well, that's the interesting thing is folks that were living here survived it somehow. At least some of them did, right? I mean, the people who were watching it. It's wild to think about. Ms. Alatorre, I know that you don't get to the park as often as you'd like these days, but can you think back of maybe your favorite spot or maybe the spot that you used to have the picnics with your mom?
Yes, we'd sit on the rocks near the where the road ends. It goes up to the
Right, Rim Village, we call that area, right?
Yeah,
the road up to the lake.
Yes, the village. And there'd be a rock fence going around it, and we'd sit on those rocks, and that's where we'd have our lunch. And that's just we went the same place every time because we were used to seeing that beauty from there. And
That's wonderful.
It just made us feel so good to be there.
That's why that's really great. Dave, you gotta now. I'm guessing your spot's like a secret spot off the map or something.
Well, I'll tell you the public-facing secret spot, which is not so secret, and it has to be that I'm biased because I'm an aquatic ecologist, right? I like water, and so I really have to encourage anyone, if you come to the park and the trail's open, the Fleetwood Trail down to the lake is really something you have to try, because Crater Lake looks like one thing when you're up on the rim looking down, but the experience of actually coming down and touching the water, maybe even going for a swim, is pretty unique. And I encourage everyone to do that. And then if you have time after that, try to find some place in the park that's a little less visited to experience some of our old growth forests.
Wonderful. Those are all super fun suggestions. And if you visit Crater Lake, just find a ranger, or if you're in Chiloquin, find somebody who lives here and ask for even more opinions, because there's so much good stuff to see out here. Layla, what's another question that the audience might have?
Yeah, the next question is from Sandy, asking what kind of animals were tribal members hunting in the region, and when did those permissions stop?
That's a good question for you, John. So what were they hunting inside the park before?
Inside the park, deer, elk, some cats, bears.
And do you know, I don't, on the top of my head, I don't know when hunting was outlawed in the park. I think it was
back in
the 50s, maybe.
40s.
40s, okay.
Yeah, it'd have to be in the 40s. They outlawed it.
Okay. So bear, or what we heard, deer, elk, some cats, bears, and it would have been outlawed in the 40s if you didn't catch that. That's what you had, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. Hopefully that answers it. What else, Layla?
Okay, the next question, many questions are for Dave. The questions are from a current Fulbrighter and a postdoc at Oregon State University, who plans to go to Crater Lake soon. And the question was, if you could, Dave, tell a little bit more on the chemicals used to get rid of invasive fish. Aren't these going to affect other organisms as well? And the second question is, how can the conservation practices for bull trout and Sun Creek inform conservation of the species at other places? I noticed the fish, its broad range, so can practices just simply be transferred to these many other regions within this range?
Yeah, it's two great questions, and in a 10-minute talk, I'm sorry I didn't have enough time to go into detail about our methods. There are two chemicals approved by the Environmental Protection Agency to use for controlling unwanted fish species, and the one we used in Sun Creek is called antimycin, it has the nice property that after you use it and it's effective, it breaks down very quickly into inert subcomponents that don't harm the environment. And if you're at Oregon State, so you're not too far away, I'd encourage you, if you want, to get a hold of me and we can talk more about that. And I think the second question about our methods and our success in forming restoration elsewhere is a good one. Like many problems, it's not always a one size fits all solution. And there are some places where this method doesn't work, but and there are some places where bull trout are doing just fine. In certain parts of their range, they're much more abundant. But the work that we have done at Crater Lake, because we started so long ago, has now been picked up by many other fisheries managers in our region. And these sorts of non-native fish removals have resulted in an increase in bull trout abundance. So it is broadly applicable. I hope that answers it.
Awesome. Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, Dave. So we're almost at time. We're over time already. So let's take one more question, and I'm going to combine. There are a couple of questions asking about what is the best time of the year to visit the park, if it's the best season or a best month that you can recommend.
I'll go ahead and answer that one. I think whenever you can, if you're flexible weather-wise, you know, if you can come up in January, as long as you can pick your weekend. But if you're just planning a trip and you know you're only going to have one day at Crater Lake, if you plan it July, August, or September, you are going to probably have pretty nice weather. There could be wildfire smoke in the air. That's the one caveat there. But the nice thing is, in July, August, and September, all the trails are melted out of snow and all the roads are melted out of snow, so that you can go and explore everything Crater Lake has to offer in those 3 months. The rest of the year, the other 8 months, there's snow on the ground covering most of the covering most of the trails and roads, which is great if you want to get out skiing or snowshoeing. But if you want to drive around, see the most, go to all those places that you heard us talk about, you know, from Mount Scott down to the water itself to go swimming, you're going to have to go July, August, and September. And was that the last question, Layla?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much for those questions, and we'll turn it back over to Layla for the closing remarks.
Yes, thank you. Claire, if you can share a PowerPoint one more time. Well, I just want to say that this was a wonderful and enlightening event, and I would like to take this opportunity to thank and acknowledge the Klamath tribes for their cooperation. I would like to thank our honorable tribal elders for making the time to join our event and for sharing their stories with us. It has been an honor for me to work with you and to listen to you. Additionally, I'd like to express my gratitude to the Crater Lake National Park for their enthusiasm and hard work on this event. This event would not have happened without John and Dave's involvement, so please join me in sending virtual round of applause to our speakers. And I'd like to also thank our audience members for being here today, for asking your questions and for listening. Once again, if you'd like to stay up to date on our future 75th anniversary events, please visit our Fulbright 75th anniversary website and sign up for the newsletter so you can get notified about our upcoming events. Actually, next month, we are hosting an event with a notable Fulbright alumnus, Dr. Roger Rosenblatt, who is a writer, author, distinguished professor, Amy and Peabody Award winner, for a discussion of his career, an award-winning new book, Cold Moon on Life, Love, and Responsibility. So I'm going to share this link just in a second again here in the chat. And once again, thanks to all of you. It was great to see all of you here today, and best of luck. And John, any final words?
No, I mean, yes, I could always go more, but all I would say is these national parks are all of ours to explore. While some of us, we make a living out of taking care of them, it's really, it's this wonderful nation's land and stories that we can explore. And so get out and make the national park yours. And really, there's 423 of them. So see if you can get them all.
All right, great. Thank you, guys.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you all.
420.